Good evening, everybody. System Chalk here with the 230th episode of our first YouTube run through the House of Light expansion for Book of Hours, playing as the Archaeologist. So we have finished the placement of the busts. I do need to pick something to represent myself and maybe something to represent the next librarian after me. We have opened all of the caches in all of the rooms, and so the majority of time, maybe what I'll say here, let's do a small inventory of the things that I can be doing between sort of salons and events in the world. So I can spend some time in the Sweet Bones. I can talk to villagers. I can craft items. I can read books. And then, as we've been seeing through the different Newman texts that I can read, I can write in my journal, make determinations, and write down histories. And of course, there's the fishing and various collections and such. Now, we'll do some different variations of these things, but right now I want to sort of be moving towards... Sorry, I also forgot leveling up my my elements of the soul. So right now I'm going to be focusing towards the things that have definite endings. So when it comes to going to the Sweet Bones, when it comes to conversations, you know, we can do those all the time. There's no definite end. We've already exhausted everything that we can get out of those, but there's still some reasons for us to do that. So what I'm going to focus on here is I'm going to get my elements of the soul to a point where I'm feeling happy with them. And then following that, I'll maybe start loosening up a little bit in terms of maybe learning a bit more about the house and the former librarians and such. But for now, we're going to clean out the rest of the determinations. Or, well, I think we have them, but I'll get the last of these written down. The Shuritic Book of Suns, a radically different text from any of the other versions of the Book of Suns, attributed to Hagar, Queen of Shur, Mother of Wolves. Set down with reverence before the intercalate by one who understood what would come to pass. Apocryphal chapters foretell the means by which the sun and splendor in the Forge might circumvent the impossibility of their joining through proxies that are in some sense themselves. Alright, now I don't think we need to spend too much time on the Great Counterfeit, but I am just going to make sure that we lock the end result in case I misunderstood how the labeling worked. So, Glorious Origin. I also want to make a note here. So it says, adds moth and lantern to your journal, replaces any other origin determination. So what's interesting here is that I can't think of a history where I'm going to need moth or lantern, because the two unique ones would be either... Actually, this is kind of an interesting one for the archaeologist, because it does feel like there are two very clear paths. One would be Edgeforge and Grail. That would be the merciless alteration. And the other one would be towards a fundamental aesthetic, so Nock, Scale, and Winter. So I definitely have some ideas in terms of where I want to go with this, but you can think, unless there was sort of a story reason for you to want to write down this origin, this is not going to move you further along the lines of a unique archaeologist victory. Okay, well that was the lantern, so let's get a quick moon and nectar out of the way there. So my view is there shouldn't be any surprises, but taking the time to verify means I'm not going to get surprised at the end. The gods from stone will be reborn. Also, occasionally we get to see some surprises. All right, we should already be on our way to getting the next book, and the one we're waiting on is The Sun Disfigured, which will require crack track, so not much for me to do there. I'm also going to give myself a little checklist here. I'll let the clock run while I do this. So in terms of skills, so core, Arab, metal, fast, shapt, Fet. Whist. I'm going to put little stars by Fet and Whist. As I used to say in my youth, the day is done and so am I, but I've earned my pay. It is spring and the landlady has served me a slice of her stargazy pie, with the pilchard heads poking cheekily through the hot crust. Night has fallen, dawn will come soon, so now is not a bad time for me to preserve the salt. Serpent root, a mass of rootstock, shiny with age, but still somehow viable. Tiny spidery scratchings marched with embedded eggshell shards encode a cryptic message. Seaborn, tide-drawn, Menascate's sister, witch lover, the House of the Moon will always have its messenger, though its messenger is different each time in eye and flesh and heart. Feats, fights, posterns, loopholes set down against the advent of eternity by powers favoring imperfection and impermanence. Loopholes. When eternity came into the world, certain prudent powers arranged loopholes. The House of the Moon, the persistence of possibility, the right to vengeance. In the right histories, those loopholes will open again. So knock, moon, and moth. That should be black flower. And then moth. Now I'm just going to wait for reading the final text because, as I mentioned before, I've got a list of elements of the soul that I'd like to take up to their highest level. I actually want to take the time and make sure that I have the elements that I need for that. And at that point, I will actually pursue that rather aggressively. Better now. So that was kind of wasted money. It's not like I'm going to turn around and... Actually, one thing I can do, I suppose, is earn a bit of money with the health. I also could have read a book with that now that I think of it, but... Ithistry will ensure my whist endures. So again, I have ideas. What I want to do right now is make sure that I have a feasible plan. So this is going to involve, once the day crosses over, there's going to be a little bit of sort of writing on the tablet kind of planning. Okay, so the first thing that I want to pay attention to here would be, I've got Whist with a plus and Tryst with a plus. So those are my two sort of targets for advancement. Those are the highest targets for advancement, actually, because those are ones that have... those are the ones that have sort of their floor. They're like, I need to bring them up higher if I can. But on the other hand, if I can't get them up to a plus, I want to acknowledge that nice and early so I don't waste any more time in pushing them higher than they need to go. And then from there, you know, the shaft I might want to try and stop a little bit of the breakup that's happening in here, but we'll do this for the rest of them. So the goal here, health is the only one that's currently got 3 pluses. Sorry, it's Whist, Tryst, and Fet. Did I forget to put down oh my goodness, I did forget to put down Tryst. So all of this is manageable. I just want to take the time to actually work this out. So in practice, I actually already have a ++ whist. So from there, if I take 2 whist, gives me a + whist. Yep, that gives me a + whist. Okay, so I basically need to put everything into my whist, but I can get a +++ whist. Tryst, likewise, it's the exact same story. Okay. Now, before I do that, I think I'm willing to say at this point, I'm willing to commit to get sort of the lagger. So the Fete, the Whist, and the Tryst are all examples of ones where I could be these are ones where I could be higher. I originally preserved them for 6. Or sorry, I mean, okay, there's 2. So they're sort of currently held back right now so that they could have 6. But on top of that, I know I can take them up to a +++, conditional on me accepting that I'll only have one of them for purposes of things like salons and such. So before I go any further, we had pyroglyphics. So next up, sharps. So hushery. It doesn't like the moon, though. I think that'll... Maybe down below here? Again, no moon. That works. Sharpen my whist further. I'll remember. Okay, same story with Tryst. I'm just going to take a second here to double check that we don't have any... Okay, so Sabazine, and my guess here is going to be that there wasn't any bird song that would accommodate the moth. But I'm at the point here I would like to verify that. I'm trying to even remember where I would find the bird song. I remember I did this before and ah, dear. I don't think it was in any one of these. This would be Skolakosophy. I remember it was one where I was like, oh yeah, of course. And then, you know, the of course is never one that I remember. Pretty sure it's not any of these altars. I may even go so far as to say, as much as I would like to find this, I don't know if this is worth the trouble of chasing down right now, because I would have looked for this in the past, and if I haven't already applied it to the Sabazine, I can't see what I'm going to discover this time that would make me feel otherwise. So I think I'm going to... That's interesting. It actually makes me wonder. Okay. Well, at some point I'm going to need to find the bird song, I think. So let's... I don't think the projector will give me... This can't be bird song, yeah. I'm so frustrated with myself for not remembering this. It can't be this. Yeah. If you had asked me prior to going through all of these, I would have said it was on an upper part of the house, but we are running out of options. And honestly, part of this, at this point, is just finding the one so that I can apply it to the others. You can't do crafting in the bed, so that wouldn't make sense. Oh, right, it's the harp. Okay, so there's two things I'm going to do here. So I'm going to see how they blink. Okay. So this level of zoom will tell me what's going on. I think I did this last time too, and it was like, nope, it's just those instruments. Okay. It'll be a little bit of a narrow path, but I think we can make this work. So we'll start with sand stories. Chuck the existing tryst into it. Follow my tryst further. Birdsong. What we were, what we will be. And then we'll do the same story with Fett, hopefully taking less time. Alright, so similar story, right? If I see something like Sacrosaurus Invicti, which hasn't used the Fett, that's probably because I haven't been able to find a Horamachistry section for it. Doranwall is the other option, and actually for similar purposes. So, first thing I'm going to do, we do have the telescope, and then the problem here, oh no, hang on. And then Sacrosaurus gets Sky, so expand my Fett further. Horamachistry will widen my aspirations. So I think before I do anything else, I'm going to see what I can get with these. Yes, and then finally I'll take the metal. I will believe it was the sun disfigured. And then crack track. So I don't want to overcommit to this idea of the 3 pluses. What I'd ideally do is have something, I'd have the 6 aspects related to my endings at a point where I could see what the determination will be. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull that off. Excuse me. I don't know if I'll be able to pull that off in good time, though. As I used to say in my youth, the day is done and so am I, but I've earned my pay. So I'll show you a couple of fun things about the... I made that observation about how there seemed to be sort of 2 clear Newman that... and like they've got 2 totally separate sets of... 2 totally separate sets of aspects. So I'll kind of show you... I'll show you what implications that has for some of the determinations that you can make. The Sun Disfigured, a scroll of anthropoderm parchment written in the golden ink called Uzalt. This book houses a Newman, a truth so powerful it can perhaps believe itself. The author of the text calls herself the Elegabline. Sometimes she seems to be Sunset Celia, the Watchman's name. Sometimes she seems to be Lady Tryphon, the Grail-Long. It is unclear whether these are separate entities or the same person. It may be unclear even to the writer. The flaws in the Sun's plan are elucidated. The Sun's plan itself is never entirely clear, but it is a project of some kind to enter, possess, or surrender to the glory, the pure light above the mantis. This book suggests ways in which that plan might fail. The Sun's weakness. The Sun's sins and the Sun's scars are our salvation. There are histories where they will trap us, prevent us rising to eternity. So for this, let's do the high-level Arab. I guess Tradisma Hyra is my best bet here. So Marikat. Okay. So the level 25 for this is the gods from stone will be consumed. This history is my last and greatest work. The greedier hours will take advantage of the sun's weakness. They will devour the last of the gods from stone, and the old world will feed the new. So I'm actually probably going to make some notes on these. Because it's the last one, I'll just take a second and verify the lantern and moth, but that... No! Like 20 minutes of... Nope, I'm sorry. I am going to have to load this. It just occurred to me, you cannot undo the history that you write. So there's no way for me to undo the mistake that I just made. I do apologize. Let me make sure. Okay, so I've got other upgrades that I need to lock in, so... Sorry, that's really embarrassing. I wish I remembered which of these I used for FET. Right, Sacra Salis Invicti. Okay, Sun Disfigured. I actually think I'm reasonably okay with the rest of these. And then... what I'll do here, we're gonna do the same trick as last time. Actually, we can do that. Well, I need to be choosy on which... We'll do that with Faust. So we will read A Child's Treasury of Golden Afternoons again. So this is more formality, but I did say I was going to put the Newman in. Okay, and then Lantern and Moth. Kind of tied up all the Moth, but... Okay, so I got what I needed out of the Sun's weakness. So one of the implications that I have for... actually, I can do this... I think I can do this with just an ink. So one of the implications for the division between merciless alteration and inescapable confinement. So merciless alteration gives us Edge, Forge, and Grail, and inescapable confinement has Knock, Scale, and Winter. So they're completely disjoint in terms of the aspects that they need or use. And when I was doing the Twiceborn and the artist, what I found was for those there was some overlap with the other endings that you could do. So I was intrigued by that. This is kind of the first time where I've had such a clear path where there's no overlap in terms of the histories that you want to write. Now, these determinations tend to help you in writing the history. But I always think it's kind of fun to also make determinations that are roughly in, like, even if you don't need them, it's kind of fun to do determinations in line with what you were working for. So with that in mind, the determinations usually have a primary boost and then a secondary. So for instance, for the flower, right, we can make a determination between white, red, or black. But in this case here, Black doesn't really give us anything. We don't need moon, and we don't like it. Just the secondary doesn't give us an advantage. Whereas in the case of red, the first flower, well, that that gives us forge. That would be something that we can, that would be something that we would use if we wanted to pursue one of the endings for the merciless alteration. But in contrast, if forge would imply that we would be using the merciless alteration, but if we choose white, that will actually both improve winter and knock. So that would move us further along the path of inescapable confinement. And for the next two, like the oldest and the origin, that tends to follow through. So in the case of oldest, you may already have guessed, but like Grail is the one that would be aligned with merciless alteration. That would give Grail an edge. Whereas if we went for heart, that would be for the horned axe. And you're like, well, we don't need heart for inescapable confinement. True, but the horned axe also grants scale, which is what you would use that for. But again, you've got that clear, merciless alteration or inescapable confinement division. Now, this also carries through to origin. So in this case, I think I skipped over one here, but this is pretty straightforward. So roots would be granting grail. So again, you don't worry about the nectar, but it'll give you a little extra grail. Whereas shell would give scale. And again, you see that division between inescapable confinement and merciless alteration. But where it gets a little interesting here would be, there may be something that I can draw out of this in terms of sort of the broader relationships that the game is talking about. But when it comes to speech, there's actually three that are relevant here. So key, which is the rose one, should also grant you some forge. So again, aligning with merciless alteration. Sword, as you may guess, would give you edge, but it actually also grants winter. And then wound would be the one that gives knock. So in this case, speech, the sword, is kind of the interesting one because it is technically the one that crosses over both of the archaeologists' two priorities. But in the end, I'm really I can only write one history. And so the question is, between the two, what's the one that I find most appealing? And then sort of building from there, like where do I want to direct the extra points that I'll get inside the journal? But these are the kinds of questions that I will answer in a future episode. So we've got one more for the week. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow. Until then, take care.